little reminder of some of what we've discussed already. Many things, but one of the many things was different days of Brahma, different appearances of Krishna, and different appearances of Krishna. Then sometimes there's a different presentation of Srimad Bhagavatam from a different source than the one that we're accustomed to hearing. The one that we're accustomed to hearing is what's shown on the screen. There's Garbhodakshay Vishnu, who is sometimes identified as Narayana, but because he's an expansion of Narayana. Just a little sharing with all of you. This is not exactly on topic, but it's related. I've been immersed in preparing for the visit to Haridwar and Rishikesh and then Badrinath, immersed in it. And one of the features of Rishikesh, one of the features of Haridwar is the place of the Saptarishis. It's said in Mahabharata that because the Saptarishis were undergoing their purification process, tapas, in order to not make such a loud noise because the Ganges up north there flows very fast. So she made it nice for them. She broke into 7 tributaries, so it would be less noisy. And according to Bhagavad Gita, Krishna and Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks that the Saptarishis and the 4 Kumaras, and before them the 4 Kumaras and many, and all the Devas, they came from Krishna. And then if you read carefully, the purport says, Hiranyagarbha Brahma, from his mind came the 4 Kumaras, whereas the verse says, from Krishna says, from my mind. Have you noticed that? Next time you read Bhagavad Gita chapter 10, text 6, you can notice that. The verse, Krishna says, they came from me. And right in the purport of the same verse, is 10:6 Bhagavad Gita. In the same purport of the same verse, the explanation is from Hiranyagarbha Brahma. Hiranyagarbha Brahma. These entities came because they came from the body of Lord Brahma. Firstborn living being produced so many other beings. And then, so that's a contradiction. Appears to be a contradiction. We're dealing with apparent contradictions already. Welcome. And then in the Bhagavatam, there's a description that the Saptarishis change every manu. A new manu, 14 manu, is an every day of Brahma. And each of the manus establishes Saptarishis. And different by name, different ones. And each of those Saptarishis have parents. And it's not Brahma. So now we have option A, B, and C that seem to be an apparent contradiction. How to resolve that apparent contradiction? There's different ways to resolve the apparent contradiction, but one very simple way is Krishna is the karana of all karanas. And one of the causes is Brahma. And one of the causes that Brahma causes, the effect that Brahma causes, is different living entities that then become the mother and father of the Saptarishis. So they're all correct. Hiranyagarbha Brahma, Lord Vishnu, and the parents, because he's the father of all fathers, or the Karan of all Karanas. So similarly, like on the screen here, Lord Narayana to Lord Brahma. What's Garbhodakshay Vishnu? Lord Narayana is in Vaikuntha, and Garbhodakshay Vishnu is in the Garbhodak ocean, which isn't exactly Vaikuntha, but it's not exactly not Vaikuntha either. It's this fully spiritual. So there's reference here, Canto 3, Chapter 4, verse number 13. The person speaking is Maitreya speaking to Uddhava. No, first it's Vidura speaking to Uddhava. Oh, Uddhava, in the lotus millennium, millennium means yuga, or excuse me, kalpa, day of Brahma. In the lotus, Padma kalpa, the lotus millennium, in the days of yore, at the beginning of creation, I spoke to Brahma, that's Garbhodakshay Vishnu, spoke to Brahma, who is situated on the lotus that grows out of my navel, about my transcendental glories, which the great sages describe as Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's a time, because we were discussing different circumstances and times when the Bhagavatam was spoken. So here is the statement, what Lord Vishnu is indicating to Uddhava, that he spoke this Srimad Bhagavatam to Lord Brahma. And then similarly, Canto 12, this celebrated last chapter, there's so many references to Bhagavatam. It was to Lord Brahma that the Supreme Personality of Godhead first revealed the Srimad Bhagavatam in full. At that time, Brahma, frightened by material existence, was sitting on the lotus flower that had grown from the Lord's navel. So he heard. And what is it that he heard? It's not identified in that section, either in Canto 3 or in Canto 12, but it's identified in Canto 2. And some of you are familiar with these 4 verses called the Chatur Shloki verses, the essence of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. So I'm just going to show those to you, mention them briefly. The entire Srimad Bhagavatam. There are different places where the entire Srimad Bhagavatam can be said to. It is said that it's summarized, and this is one of those places. The Chatur Shloki verses. One can say correctly that the entire 18,000 verses minus 4 are expanded from these 4, or the others are expansions or further delineations of these 4. One can say the same thing. We did this already. The first 3 chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, chapters 1 through 3, the 6 questions, 6 answers, it's also not just 4 verses, but it's the summation of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. And there's another nice section in Srimad Bhagavatam where one can say the same thing. And that is Canto 1, Chapter 7. After Vyasa has completed compiling all the Vedas, and he's feeling insufficiency, Narada comes and tells him why, because you haven't sufficiently glorified the personality of Godhead. He gives him 2 instructions. One instruction, sit in trance of meditation right here by the side of the river Saraswati and absorb your mind in trance. And that which you experience during your trance of meditation, that should be the basis of the will satisfy you. That is Srimad Bhagavatam. So the basis of Srimad Bhagavatam is the several verses, 4 verses of of Vyasa's realization. So there's others. Those are three important places. If you are interested later to read and study and read commentary on, and they're discussed in Chaitanya Charitamrita as well, because they're very important verses. So here's the Chatur the first of the Chatur Sloki verses starts with verse 33. So this is Garbhodakshay Vishnu revealing into the heart of Lord Brahma. It is I, the personality of Godhead, who was existing before the creation, when there was nothing but myself, nor was there the material nature the cause of this creation. That which you see now is also I, the personality of Godhead, and after annihilation it remains will also be I, the personality of Godhead. So he's the source of every. We heard in this morning's Bhagavatam verse, some of you attended this morning's Bhagavatam class, we read a verse from Canto 1, Chapter 2, where the statement is made, the cause and effect, Sat Asad is the Sanskrit, and Prabhupada is translated as the cause and effect of the absolute truth and the creation, the elements of creation, were generated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, when, as it's being said here, there wasn't anything. There wasn't the elements. And one element causes another element, the unfolding of creation. In the sarga aspect, we spoke a little bit about the sarga aspect of material creation and how does it come about. Matter comes from spirit, or matter comes from the source of everything. The Supreme Spirit has shaktis, material at potency. So this is the first of the Chatur Sloki verses. Long purports, that like 6-page long purports. Very important verses. O Brahma, whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relation to me, has no reality. Know it as my illusory energy, that reflection which appears to be in darkness. So there's light, and there's darkness, and there's reflection of light in darkness. The reflection of light in darkness comes from the light. Reflection comes from the source that casts the reflection. And then there's some reflecting surface that shows the reflection. But the reflection is not the, it's like your rear view mirror. When you look in your rear view mirror, there's light in the rear view mirror, but it's not the source of the light, it's the reflection of the source of light. Then you can philosophically take that backwards, and where does that light from the headlight of the car behind you come from, and where does that come from, where does that come from, where does that come from? If it's seen, if the conception of it, the perception and conception of it is not connected to the source of emanation, then that's the illusory energy. And most of the time, most of us are captured by the illusory energy. And there are self-realized souls that see the reflection, but also see the reflection is where the reflection comes from. Once Prabhupada was asked, more than once Prabhupada was asked, Swamiji, have you seen God? A reporter. And Prabhupada's reply, if I gave you the answer, would you believe me? Oh, yes. Not only I've seen God, but I'm seeing him all the time. Do you believe me? Because what would it be like to see God all the time? No, seeing God all the time means what? It can mean different things. But behind the reflection, there's the source of the reflection. Behind everything, like opulences of the Absolute, Chapter 10, Bhagavad Gita. Same what's being presented here. You can read the purport of 9:2934, and it's very similar to that message of the opulences of the Absolute. I'm the this, I am the that. I'm the light of the sun and the moon. I am aham. So there's the light of the sun, there's the light of the moon, and that's Krishna. So philosophically, it's not difficult. Devotionally, that's where the challenge is, because we're enamored by the external energy in the way of wishing to be the enjoyers of. And if that wishing to be the enjoyer of is replaced with wishing to be in the service of the source, then we can see things the way that Krishna sees things. It's in the Sanskrit is jnana chakshusha, or shastra chakshusha, or seeing through the eyes of Scripture. So to see Krishna everywhere can mean different things. To see Krishna at all times can mean different things. And otherwise, not reality. Abhasa is there. Yata abhasa. Yata tamaha. Last line. Tavidyat atmamayo yam. Atmano mayam. Yata baso yata tamaha. This is quickly, because the purports are quite long. O Brahma, please know that the universal elements enter into the cosmos and at the same time do not enter into the cosmos, semicolon. Similarly, I myself also exist within everything created, and at the same time I am outside of everything. Double talk. But it's not double talk. It appears to be double talk. But it's the mystic potency. As Krishna has mystic potency, his potencies also have mystic capacity. That is to say, the reservoir is 1 minus 1 equals 1. From spiritual technology or spiritual math. Correct? The Ishopanishad, Om Purnamadak Purnamidam, Purnat Purnam Udachyate. This verse is saying that. Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva. So the supreme Purnam expands into so many expansions, both personal, tiny, and energetic expansions, but the original isn't diminished. The original 1 isn't diminished. 1 minus 1 equals 1. And then those potencies that expand, the reservoir of potencies aren't diminished. We're diminished. Whatever energy we have, we expend our energy and we're diminished. But, the energies of the transcendental energies of Krishna aren't diminished. Even they expand. So they're spread everywhere, but they're not everywhere, because the original source of the potency is unchanged, although expanded. Even something material like the sun, how long has the sun been shining? Long time. Doesn't appear to be diminishing. At some point it's going to be finished. So, but the diminishing heat and light of the sun isn't what we experience. It's continuing. Where's that energy coming from? That's another topic. But it's not diminishing. but that eventually it will, because it's created and then it's annihilated. But the energies of Krishna, fundamentally, they may be manifested and withdrawn, but the energies are not created or destroyed. They're eternal potencies. Manifested or not manifested, they're eternal potencies. So the energies are everywhere, but not everywhere. Krishna is everywhere, but not everywhere. Behold by mystic potency. And it's again, this is one of the Chatur Shloki verses of the Bhagavatam. It's an essential tattva, Krishna tattva. To understand Krishna, we need to understand his potencies. And here's the final. A person who is searching after the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, must certainly search for it up to this in all circumstances, in all space and time, both directly and indirectly. And that has the biggest purport of all. The method is bhakti, but bhakti requires an inquisitive spirit. It's not just doing something and following the vidhis and yet you're doing bhakti. It's vidhis, vaidhi sadhana bhakti. However, the inquisitiveness is important to realize. The person who is searching after the inquisitive soul, jigyasa, it's right in the first line of the Sanskrit. The searching must be in all places, at all times, in all circumstances, in order for the complete realization. Otherwise, some realization, yes, but not complete realization. So the Bhagavatam wants to give us the fullness of God realization. And we discussed this yesterday. The fullness is Krishna Prema. It's not only acknowledging that God exists and we have some position in relation to the Supreme, that whoever exists, we're eternal. He is the Supreme Eternal. We have some relationship of service. Exercise that relationship in its mature stage and its loving relationship, prema bhakti. Now, I want to go to another topic besides that. This just little beginning part was just some of the essential messages where, in your own leisure or in your reading groups or however you go about your reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, to become familiar with those three sections I just mentioned. They're very rich, very comprehensive, very mind-churning and thoughtfulness-churning topics. I'll say them again. The first three chapters, Canto 1. These verses from Canto 1, Chapter 7, Vyasa's realizations, under the instruction of Narada, and then these 4 Chatur Shloki verses. And if these, the way it's described by Jiva Goswami is, if these essential verses seem to be different than something at a later part of the Bhagavatam or some other part of the Bhagavatam, then that understanding is incorrect. You might have to adjust that understanding to align with these fundamental verses, because the fundamental verses don't change. Your reading and your understanding of something may differ. Just like I did one at the beginning, what's the source of the Saptarishis? There's 3 choices. And it aligns because there's one that's the source of everything. And to say Krishna is the source of this Saptarishis, or Brahma's mind is the source of the Saptarishis, or the parents are the source of the Saptarishis, they're all correct. Your understanding must align with these fundamental ones. So it's important to know the fundamental ones, so that you're reading in other parts of the Bhagavatam, you can evaluate Do you have you understood it correctly? If not, then you need to, adjust the lens a little bit so you can see it correctly. Now, I wanted to address something I started to address, but I want to do it a little more fully, and that is this question about the glorification of Bhadra Purnima. I mentioned this yesterday. When we're going to be in Rishikesh on Bhadra Purnima, Haridwar or Rishikesh, one or the other, and we're going to be. Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj is going to speak about it, and so in that Bhadra Purnima verse from Canto 12, Chapter 13, verse 13, it says, by now you've heard it multiple times, one who makes a gift of Srimad Bhagavatam on a golden throne on the month of Bhadra Purnima, on the Bhadra Purnima day, will be entitled to it, become situated in the spiritual world. That's not exactly the language. So here, if on the full moon day of the month of Bhadra, one places Srimad Bhagavatam on a golden throne and gives it as a gift, he will attain the supreme transcendental destination. There are several responses. Is this exaggeration? There's a particular language about exaggeration. It's called Arthavada, or the doctrine of exaggerated praise. Artha Vada, the doctrine of exaggerated praise. Is it just being said because to get people to do it, to hype them up and say, go ahead, do it, because you get lots of benefits? Is it an exaggerated praise? So we're going to address that question. There's different ways to address the question. One of the ways to address the question is found in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami's writings, or Prabhupada's summary study, Nectar Devotion. In these statements about devotional service, sometimes it may appear that the results have been overestimated, but actually there's no overestimation. And he, Rupa Goswami, gives examples to point to indicate. For example, in the case of the four Kumaras, it's described they went to the gates of Vaikuntha. They were Brahman realized. However, simply by smelling the incense and the sandalwood that was offered to the Lord entering into their nostrils, something happened. And they became Brahman, went from Brahman realization to Bhagavan realization with just the potency of such a simple experience. Now, how did they get to the gates of Vaikuntha? They were qualified. Another example given by Rupa Goswami is the case of Bilvamangala Thakur. Bilvamangala Thakur was a Brahmana, but he was somehow overwhelmed by lust. And simply by hearing about Krishna, there's details in his life story, but he gave up that lusty attraction and instead became completely absorbed in his love for Krishna. He gave up his beautiful girlfriend, the prostitute lady, and became a lover of Krishna. Just by hearing about Krishna, the potency is there. Another statement made, this is Sanatan Goswami in his twice, he addresses this, because there are many amazing things that take place in Krishna's pastimes or Krishna's exchanges with his devotees. Some amazing things. Here's his verse in Sanskrit. To presume, therefore, that these words of Bhakti Shastras are merely overstated praise, that's Arthavad, is certainly unreasonable. Right there in the Sanskrit, Arthavada. That devotional service is vastly superior to mere liberation is not an idea one should dismiss as arthavad or exaggerated praise. We discussed this yesterday a little bit, which A or B. The goal of devotional service is to go back to Godhead. B, the goal of devotional service is to awaken our dormant love of God. Well, you can say both, but you can say dormant love of God because the subset is liberation. And one who is liberated may not have love of God because there are different types of liberation. Liberation, or mukti, another name for mukti is nirvana, which means cessation of material existence. The Buddhists are very fond of the phrase, although he rejected the Vedas. It's a Sanskrit phrase that he didn't reject. That's cessation of material existence, nirvana. Nirvana, cessation of the forest of material existence, nirvana. But you can cease material existence, but not have spiritual existence. At least conceptually cease material existence, but not have spiritual existence. So, therefore, muktir hitvanyata rupam swarupena vyavastati. The definition given in the Bhagavatam is swarupena vyavastati, being situated in one's swarup, engage in devotional service. That's what mukti is. It's the complete feature of mukti. Engage in loving service unto Krishna. Muktir hitvanyata rupam, in one spiritual form. Swarupena vyavastati. And so, some of you may recognize Vaisheshika Prabhu. There's Vaisheshika Prabhu kindly giving a gift of Srimad Bhagavatam to somebody. That Srimad Bhagavatam 12:13 is promising the giver of the gift of Srimad Bhagavatam will attain the supreme transcendental destination. It's no exaggeration. Such a fortunate giver has begun or has significantly nourished their devotional service, which is the path of liberation. Got it? We'll say it again a couple more different ways. Over on the left-hand side is where we are, and over on the right-hand side is where we want to be. And it's a big leap of faith. The speed at which the spiritual results that come from spiritual activities are dependent upon the nature and intensity of the faith of the practitioner. We discussed this. Like the sun affects different people in different ways. If there's clouds in the sky, it doesn't get as much heat and light from the sun. If it's night, if you're got the inside and the door is locked, you're not going to get the benefit of the sun. So the receptivity factor or the faith factor, say it either way, is going to determine the benefit that one gets from the process of bhakti. But the process of bhakti has begun. Here is a nice statement from Scripture. Subhashita Ratna Bandhangaram. In the following 6 entities, one gets reciprocation according to the degree and variety of one's faith. 1, in a deity. 2, in a holy place. 3, in a mantra. 4, in an astrologer. 5, in a doctor. And 6, in one's guru. And it's true. having faith in a doctor and the medicine the doctor gives, the diagnosis of the doctor, etc., it has a significant factor in the benefit you get from that doctor and that medicine and the treatment. It's not a 10, but it's very important, corresponding to the faith that one has in each of these four. It's receptivity. The potency of the holy place, one can receive greater or lesser depending upon, the faith that you have, that being in this holy place and doing these things, coming to the temple, seeing the deity, etc., etc., etc. There's the ritualistic way, and it doesn't get the same effect. But the devotional way, it has a different effect. It doesn't mean we don't follow the vidhis. We should follow the vidhis. I'm going to tell a little story, a deity story. There's a nice devotee somewhere in members of some temple, and the wife has Radha Krishna deities at home. I know, so I came to become familiar with the family and her dedication, devotion. And so I asked, do you get the opportunity sometimes to worship the deity in the temple? She was silent. She looked at her husband. Her husband nodded. There was like silent signals. And she said, no, because I engage in my deity worship, making offerings and artis 7 times daily at home, as they do in the temple. My eyes got big and said, wow. And you must have some reciprocation experiences with your deity, yes? She was silent. She looked at her husband. He nodded. There was the signal that you can tell him, go ahead. She said, I'm very particular about the procedure that I follow in worshiping the deity. One of the things that I do before making the offering to Krishna, I remove the flute and place the flute in a certain place, make the offering. When the offering is done, I put the flute back in Krishna's hand. And on 3 occasions, when I went to put the flute back in Krishna's hand, it was already in Krishna's hand. And she just smiled. She wasn't making a big thing about it, but she was just letting me know there's corresponding to the faith that it's not just a brass or marble deity or figure, it's Krishna. And because of that faith, she worships faithfully, following the vidhis, but there's a reciprocation beyond the regulations because of the faith and so forth. It's the same with each of these other 6 items. So faith plays a big role. There's same statement in Sri Brahma Samhita. Towards the end of Sri Brahma Samhita, this is Bhaktisiddhanta's English translation of the Sanskrit. Yadrishi Yadrishi Shraddha Siddhi Bhavati Tadrishi. So Siddhi Bhavati. Siddhi he translates as realization. Siddhi, perfection. Or perfection or realization arises corresponding to Shraddha. And in Padma Purana, the same thing is stated. Different language. A person who has once uttered the 2 syllables, Hari, has rolled up his sleeves to walk on the path of liberation. Badha parikaras. So mokshaya gamanam prati, or one's journey on the path of bhakti has begun. just by once. So there's all these statements of having once chanted, but the indication is the path has begun. Same as this giving the gift of Srimad Bhagavatam, their privilege of returning to the spiritual world, the path has begun. That's the understanding. It's not an exaggeration. And the statement that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the Raja of all scriptures, that's also not an exaggeration. And this is a little promotion for the Bhadra Purnima. Invite Srimad Bhagavatam to your home, inspire others who you come across, give others the beginning to their journey, and this is what our founder Acharya did. This is a painting of Srila Prabhupada descending from the Jaladuta, and what does he have in that little suitcase? Bhagavatams. Of course, it's in the hull of the ship. It was the cargo section of the ship, but that's what he came to deliver. That's why he went to that journey, and all the effort before he went to the journey to gather the funds which he didn't have to print the Bhagavatam, to give the Bhagavatam to the English-speaking parts of the world, because that was his injunction, which he had faith in, and he executed. And so we're assisting in some way. So some glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam is never excessive. It's unending. Keep going and keep going and keep going. Just today I was going through looking for some particular reference in relation to Sri Brahma Samhita and the verse in Sri Brahma Samhita that speaks of the position, the relationship between Govinda and Ganesh, because there's a whole section in Sri Brahma Samhita of prayers where the different devas and devis are mentioned and their relationship with Govinda. The refrain, Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami, that section. So that the capacity that Ganesh has to remove obstacles comes from what? On the head of an elephant, there's two. The Sanskrit word is tumuli, or two protrusions, two bumps on the elephant's head. And the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead placed upon those tumuli of Ganesh enables him to remove obstacles. The obstacle removal power comes from the source of power. So he may be worshipped, but he's not the one that's removing the obstacles. Ultimately, it's Govinda, the personality of Godhead. So the personality of Godhead, the remover of obstacles, is Srimad Bhagavatam, combined, as we heard yesterday, with the chanting of the holy name. It's a seamless fit. The two go well together, and those that are fortunate and intelligent take advantage of that facility. Very generously given by the previous acharyas and gifted to, at least in the Western country, gifted to us by Srila Prabhupada. Let's see if there's some discussion. Why are you sitting way over there? Can you see the screen? Okay. There's as many people as over there as there are over here, but you can't see them. And they can't see you either. But that's just for your information. So, you want to say something? Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No.
Yes, okay. You have a microphone too? Look at this.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, could we go back to the slide with the verse talking about the faith in the deity, faith in the doctor? Had a question. Yes. So, Maharaj, you were mentioning about being inquisitive and then also having faith.
Yes.
I was just asking. I know we have to have faith. That's very important. But also, we hear that we shouldn't have blind faith. So, going back to that, and also, how do we be inquisitive in the right way without cross questioning and also maintaining faith? I don't know if my question made sense, but I'm trying to come. I guess I'm trying to find the connect between being inquisitive and having faith.
Well, the 9 stages of bhakti as given to us by Rupa Goswami begins with faith, adar shraddha. In one sense, faith is intrinsic to the soul. That's one of the things that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes. The 9 stages of bhakti can be looked at through the lens of just different stages of faith. This stage, that stage, the other stage. So where does the faith come from is intrinsic to the soul. And if I don't have faith in the Supreme, I'm going to have faith in something because it's intrinsic to the soul. Now, inquisitiveness, which is how do the two connect, what is it that we're inquisitive about? And then, fundamentally, even in an ordinary non-human entity, we want happiness. We want to sense happiness, want pleasure derived through the senses. Because we want happiness, and that's the sense of what happiness is. So the fulfillment of my desire for happiness. Now, then faith is the lens through which that efforts for finding happiness is directed. And if a human remains on an animal platform, it's just the senses, gratifying the senses in XYZ ways. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Sense gratification. So we're fundamentally, so faith is, I want happiness, and what is it that I repose my aspiration for happiness? So that which in fact brings me, we had this discussion yesterday of what is real happiness. It was Rupa Vilas's question about how do I help a young person understand how I know I'm headed in the right direction, spiritual direction. So that one finds such satisfaction that the faith is aligned with that which is genuine and not that which is illusory. Reality distinguished from illusion message. Or no longer have aspirations for hankering and lamenting for something I don't have and losing something that I have. When that's gone. So commensurate with the modes of nature and the association that one keeps strongly influences the modes of nature, then so that I'm trying to zero in on the correlation. How do the two fit together? Faith and inquisitiveness. I want inquisitiveness fundamentally as I want happiness. And what's that which is going to bring me happiness? That's my faith. So association is going to determine or influence strongly what it is that I have faith in, and therefore the direction of my inquisitiveness. It's like, for example, the common example, Prayas and Shreyas. A child likes to play. You like to play? Of course. Then, at some point, by influence of an adult and their parent or someone, or a combination of someone's, no, you have to, not for this period of time of the day, you have to go to school. Because there's a longer term benefit than the playing benefit. So that faith is influenced by happiness, the sense of finding happiness is influenced by the association. So one needs the right association. And that can guide faith. No, it's real faith, it's genuine faith if it actually brings one that position of what real happiness is. Now, that's not a complete picture, but that's a beginning picture of how the two correspond. So, therefore, it's very important that Prabhupada got off the Jaladuta and brought Krishna consciousness to the Western world, and from there around the world. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, they say, doing mantra chanting in holy places like Mathura or Vrindavan, it has more effect. I mean, it gives result much
The
quicker.
potency is there, yes.
Okay. How, Maharaj? Because it's a very holy place. How is it possible?
Because the potency is there. In addition to purity is there, potency is there. Supposing there are people in Vrindavan, a holy place, that are unclean. They leave trash all over the place, and they pollute the river Jamuna, and they do bad stuff. But the place is not contaminated by that. This potency is still there. So then conscientious, wholesome, mode of goodness people will try to keep Vrindavan clean and the river Jamuna from being polluted, and etc. Sewage from being dumped anywhere, and etc. etc. But the place is nonetheless pristine, and there's a spiritual potency there. Same with the deity, same with the Bhagavatam, same with the name. There's Namabhas. The chanting of Namabhas doesn't yield you, the chanter, or the one who hears your chanting, the same as Shuddha Nam chanting, the chanter and the one who is hearing that chanting. But the name doesn't become contaminated, even when it's abhas. Even when it's in scorn and derision, Shishupal. Or unintentional, like a Jamil, meaning something, Hela Namabas. Powerful. So that's how it works. It's just fundamentally invested with Nitya Sarva Shaktis, great spiritual potency. The Dham of the Supreme Lord is same, Nitya Sarva Shaktis. And then we had this discussion, you can make your home such a place. But how is the awakened state of bhakti can then make that atmosphere surcharged spiritually. The iron rod put into fire and becomes warm. and eventually becomes fire, potentially. So your home can become such a place, or any place can become such a place. Sometime, if it so happens, you may visit New York City, and if you visit New York City, chances are you'll also visit 26 2nd Avenue. Now, they completely ripped up the floor of 26 2nd Avenue because it was old wood. They put in a new floor. And they painted the walls so it's different paint than when Prabhupada was there. But you walk in the place and you feel something. Anyway, most people feel something. Even people off the street, they don't know what it is, but they feel something because there's a potency there from the investment of spiritual potency from the sankirtan of a pure devotee of the Lord, and the seed-like condition that he established in that place. It's a place of pilgrimage in New York City. It's just a storefront, like any other storefront in one sense. What makes the difference? Okay.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Yeah, just was thinking about this astrologer, like how is he related here in this one? And
Who?
astrologer?
The astrologer.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen an astrologer?
No, I have seen, but after getting into Krishna consciousness,
I'm not saying that
it
you
was
should.
little away
I'm just
from it.
asking, I'm responding to your question. Your question is, how does faith correspond with the benefit that one might derive from seeing an astrologer? That's your question.
Yes, Maharaj.
That's your question. So I've asked you, have you seen an astrologer? And, supposing there's 16 astrologers you visited, supposing, in the course of your life, and one of them seems outstanding. And so investing faith, not just because they're outstanding, but your faith in their outstandingness will help you derive the benefit that may be derived from an astrologer. That's the message. Like medicine, like a doctor or a teacher, etc. The effectiveness of the astrologer, supposing there's superlative astrologer, supposing you don't know that, the effectiveness is going to be diminished for those that don't really have that confidence in the astrologer that they're super excellent. That's the message. It's subjective. It's not absolute, but it's a principle. The role of faith.
Thank you. Hare Krishna Maharaj. In one of the slides, we had universal elements enter into cosmos and at the same time do not enter into the cosmos.
Yeah.
How do we understand that, Maharaj?
Okay, I tried to explain it, but let's say, to keep it really simple, the source of those elements that manifest is what? According to the Bhagavatam, according to the 2nd canto, and according to the 3rd canto, there are Shaktis that are personified in the spiritual world. Vishnu, in the spiritual realm, beyond the material realm, before the material realm is manifested, he is surrounded by personification of various Shaktis. And they may expand those Shaktis in the form of elements within the cosmos. They're not depleted. There's Krishna's Shaktis. So they're not diminished. So they're expanded, but they're not diminished. In that sense, expanded everywhere, but not everywhere. They don't, leave Vaikuntha and take a vacation, and go to the cosmos and do what they do in the cosmos, and then go back to home. They expand. They enter, but do not enter. It's the nature of the supreme It's the same. I gave the example Om Purnamadak Purnamidam. From the Supreme, he expands, but the source from which he expands isn't diminished by expanding. Same with the Shaktis. Okay.
Sure, Maharaj.
Okay. Over on this side, you have something, right?
Yes, Maharaj. I think it's been answered. My question was about to ask you, the previous thing which you talked about, the reciprocation of deity. So I was about to ask you, how do you experience with the holy place the reciprocation?
It depends on the person what they experience. The reciprocation is personal, very customized, and according to the person, there's going to be reciprocation. It's between the person and the Supreme Source, and it's personal. So it depends. Anything
you.
else over there? Yeah.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. You mentioned Namabas chanting. So the transition from Namabas to pure chanting, of course, Krishna's mercy, the devotees association, that's important. But that desire, it has to come from the practitioner in one sense to go there. Otherwise, we can be stuck in that chanting for millions of lifetime, right?
Yes.
So how can we
How to question?
how to encourage ourselves to go
Abhyasa yoga yuktena chetasananyagamino. With faith, you practice with faith, not just practice, but practice. So it requires good association helps. Hearing transcendental messages with attentiveness from the right source helps. But it's not mechanical. It's not a vending machine. It's something that each of us, have to invest in acquisitiveness back to this, the desire to be connected rather than being in la la land and feeling, not satisfied. We all know the dissatisfied feeling. And that's not just abandon the dissatisfied feeling. Go to what? Go to what the scripture says. Then you practice what the scripture says. It requires internal cultivation, ultimately. Your relationship with Krishna is not on the surface. It's internal. And there's no end to that cultivation dynamic. Okay?
Thank you.
Anything else back there? Okay. Yes, something up here?
Maharaj, I have a comment and a question, Maharaj. About the comment, the Emperor verse.
The which?
Emperor verse, Paribhasha Sutra, Ete Chamsa Kalapanishad.
Okay.
That verse also is a fundamental verse that we need to understand that verse in order for us to build our reading or studying Bhagavatam to understand. If we don't understand that verse correctly, then our reading or understanding of Bhagavatam can be also need to be checked.
Can be also?
We need to come back and understand that.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
I was...
You're repeating the same. The fundamental teachings later on have to align with the fundamental ones.
Yes.
Okay.
So the Chaturshloki verse is also similar?
Yes.
The fundamental
I mentioned
verses,
it.
yeah.
Yes. You understood correctly.
Okay. Thank you, Maharaj. And the other question is, when we are trying to give a Bhagavatam set to a person who is not into bhakti yet or Krishna conscious yet, because of the vastness, the number of books and the volume, sometime people hesitate to take it. And I myself hold back because the same reason, because number one, to getting that many number of books, number two, reading it. especially who are not practicing devotees, and we are trying to distribute it. So, Maharaj,
Well, it
can you-
depends on the person, depends on you. What you say. You can back off, that's an option. Take one at a time, that's an option. You know, many you can speak encouraging words that are not false words. Once you start, it's so sweet. You know, you want to continue. It may take some time, but something that's of value, you want to continue with that which is of value. How many years did it take you to complete your education? But you went through the course of education because it's something you understood to be of value. And it depends on the person and depends on the relationship, and you don't want to intimidate them. At the same time, encouragement is sometimes people get a little hesitant, and you can be co-hesitant. That's okay. It's a relationship with the person. You know the person, you learn about the person, you encourage them according to the person. Let's do this. I'll read with you the something. Over the next week, I'll read with you 3 verses a day, and let's see how it goes. Prime the pump, and see if it's meaningful. You may not have the time. There may be so many maybes, but you'll get creative depending upon the time, place, and circumstance.
just wanted to share, Maharaj. After hearing Guru Maharaj class yesterday, one of my friends wanted to take a Bhagavatam, said she was there.
Yeah.
And the other friend who got the Bhagavatam said last year during Bhadra Purnima, she wanted to start reading Guru Maharaj.
Okay.
I just wanted to share.
Well, then to start reading, wanting to start reading and start reading may not match. Association is, now I want to start reading. The association was, now let me purchase. So I recommend, you don't have to do this, but you can at least create a facility where people who want to read, they can join something, and then once they join something and start to read regularly, they like it. They may desist if the reading group disbands, but if the reading group continues because people like it, I know a number of places all over the country where reading groups, they've now completed the so many cantos, and they're moving on to the next cantos, and now they're going back and rereading it, or they're thinking of going to Chaitanya Charitamrita. And once it starts, just, and then with some regularity, that's the next hurdle, because life is busy and we get distracted with busy things. But if there's a group, small group, that meaningful sangha, and do something, like-minded people do like-minded things together, and it's transcendentally enlivening, then there's better chance that it'll continue. And if it doesn't continue, there's no loss or diminution. Anything is a permanent asset. Permanent, that's a fact. Permanent. Just hearing Prabhupada described like this. I'm an old man. I may want my youth back, but it's not going to come back. But one thing, it won't be taken from me, and that is whatever spiritual value I've received from my spiritual master, that's with me. Wherever I'm going next, that's with me. And one who understands the nature of eternality of a spiritual asset, it isn't taken. Your home will be taken. Your bank balance will be taken. Your family members will be everything's taken. But that's not going to be taken. Isn't it worth investing in something like that for oneself and others? So if it's easier to say, yeah, I agree, and then get busy and distracted. So then it's sadhu sangha. be sadhu-like, and you can't be the sadhu in everybody's life, but you can help create that atmosphere. Then others become sadhu-like and do that with others. Just last night, I met a family, husband and wife came up saying they're going to have to leave St. Louis. They've been here for 17 years, and they're going to have to go to wherever it is, Little Rock, Arkansas, or something like that. So, misfortune, but then where they go, they can create new Sangha, every town and village. It's easier to say than to do, but, don't be without devotee association. So that whatever benefit has come from the 17 years they've been here, that's what they're going to carry with them. And all the souls that come in contact with Krishna Bhakti or Bhagavat Bhakti or Srimad Bhagavatam, it's a permanent asset. And it may take a while for people to, and then encourage at the next step. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.